In this episode of The Power with Practice, we're going to talk about a smart approach to practicing. No, literally. SMART. Well, here, let me just show you this way.
SMART, it's an acronym. Sort of like BRB or LOL, all that kind of stuff. Texting language. Well, SMART was pioneered by Lance LaDuke. Lance LaDuke is an educator, performer, musical advocate. He has a website. You can read more about him. He's got a lot of good stuff on there. Matter of fact, this all came from his book on practicing. He also hosts a podcast called Brass Junkies, along with Andrew Hitz, who's probably one of the most fun tuba players I've ever seen play in my life. But I digress. SMART. It stands for specific, measurable, actions, resources, and time. Let's start with S for specific. Now, I like to think about specific in terms of baking. My wife is a fantastic baker, and I love to eat all the time. Seriously, all the time. I'm eating right now. In baking, you have to have the right mixture and ratio of ingredients in order to make whatever baked good you're going to make. If you put, for example, too much salt in, it's not going to taste right. Nobody's going to want to eat that. It's the same with practicing. You have to be specific in the goals that you set so you get a great end result that people will want to hear. So how do we get specific in our practice sessions? The best way to start is to write down.
That sounds familiar. That's right. Episode 1.
Write them down. For example, I want to be able to play the B-flat scale at 120 beats a minute in eighth notes. That's very specific, and it's achievable because you have an end goal in mind. And because you have an end goal in mind, you're going to be able to set up shorter, more achievable goals that are going to help you get there. If you aren't specific, you might as well be just saying, I want me play horn good. It's basically the same thing. Be specific. Next is M, measurable. You have to keep your goals measurable. If you're trying to play your B-flat scale at 120 beats per minute in eighth notes, the best way to do that is to record yourself and mark down what speeds you get on any specific day and how successful you were. That is definitely something that is measurable. The M part of SMART, measurable, lends itself to musical journaling.
Dear Journal, today I played Concert F for 4 counts, starting and stopping with the metronome with no bumps in the sound. Attaboy! You do journaling in your way and let me do it in mine.
You can write down what you accomplished in each practice session. It gives you sort of a timeline of your meeting your goal. Musical journaling also allows you to reach subsequent goals that you haven't even thought of yet. So if you can play the B-flat scale at 120 beats per minute in eighth notes, guess what? Now you can tackle all of the major scales, and that gives you a timeline for how soon you should be able to get each individual one prepared to the level of that B-flat scale once it is prepared itself. Now let's talk about the A, action. This is the part where you actually get to practice. What are you going to do to make sure that you reach your goal? If you're going to play a scale at 120 beats per minute, you probably would want to start at a much slower tempo and work your way up.
There's a method called the 4-click method that'll help you get that speed from slow to faster. But we'll talk about that in a later episode.
Therefore, you could journal each and every practice session where you raise the tempo of that scale until you meet your goal of 120 beats per minute. This is also a time to be specific in your actions because that way you can come back to it when you're having problems on future music and see what you did to overcome obstacles at this point in time. Let's talk about resources, otherwise known as materials.
I mean, I don't want to say I told you so, but...
So your resources for any goal should be, obviously, what you're going to write with and write on, musical journal and pencil. Also, if you're going to work on something with tempo, having a metronome. If you're going to work on something that has to do with intonation, have a tuner. If you're going to work on something that has anything to do with tone quality, matter of fact, playing your instrument in general, have a recorder of some sort. That way you're definitely going to see the real result. That takes us to the final letter of SMART, time. I'm one of those people that works better with a timeline. If I have goals or certain deadlines that I have to meet, I always do a much better job than if I'm left just to roam freely, so to speak. So, create a timeline. How long do you want to give yourself to accomplish that goal? Be realistic, but don't go easy on yourself. And that's it. SMART. S, specific. M, measurable. A, action. R, resources. And T, time.
Hopefully this episode has allowed a little bit of SMART to be put into your practice time. Next time we'll look at a little bit more about the why of practice. For today, I'm Mr. King. Happy practicing.